Welcome back. Last month, you learned about the state of Oklahoma's bold 3-year strategic plan from their Chief Information Officer, Dan Cronin. It relies in large part on a future-ready workforce and starts with 2 of his top deputies, Chief AI and Technology Officer Tai Phan and Chief Information Security Officer Daniel Langley. Tai Phan, Chief AI and Technology Officer. His colleague Daniel Langley is CISO, State of Oklahoma. Gentlemen, thanks so much for being here. Tai, I want to kick things off with you. That title, relatively new. What's going on with AI in the state of Oklahoma?
We're doing amazing things with AI, and this is really the evolution of our journey as a state within Oklahoma. A while back, the governor issued the Emerging Technology AI Task Force, and what that really did was really set the tone, the vision, and really created the prominence of a future trajectory where AI has a place and a home. As you know, Dan Cronin, our CEO, took office, he saw a great opportunity to start to accelerate that across the board. As we're starting to lay out the Chief AI Officer in Technology, we're hoping to carry forward that vision that Governor Stitt started and make it real for both our constituents, with agencies, as well as citizens. And I think that when we look at our future and our acceleration in AI, it's really going to dovetail into a lot of things that we're going to talk about today around our strategic objectives for our rolling strategy, as well as how do we make AI more trustworthy, more reliable, more secure, but also more valuable, because we are dealing with tax dollars here.
Daniel, I'll jump in with you in just a moment, but I do want to lean in there to that point, Tai. One phrase that Dan used, and we heard earlier in the program, is invisible complexity. Talk about the connection between AI and sort of eliminating invisible complexity across the organization, sir.
Absolutely. And I would say that, the adage, it used to be that they say data is the new oil, but in the age of AI, it kind of begs the question, what's the refinery of that oil, right? And so AI definitely is that. And as we start to think about how do we make complexity invisible, I would say the biggest complexity that I see today coming into the state is that data and digital services oftentimes live in systems that have been built over decades, and they a lot of times are disaggregated. So it really makes it hard to refine that data, that information that's harnessed out of those systems. So as we simplify our technology landscape, we're really interested in making sure that we're modernizing in the correct way to make that complexity invisible. The first is just centralize on common platform and tools. And that really is a testament to our capabilities in architecture, engineering, to identify capabilities that's reusable and universal across the board. Second piece here is there's this idea of data decentralization, data democratization. Agencies should be able to own and run at speed with their data. And as we think about what that means in the age of AI, that becomes an accelerator and a good indicator and a pacing for us as to where we'll be in the years to come.
Cybersecurity is also foundational in that plan. Daniel, what did you see when you got in here relative to data, and what did you want to tackle from that data perspective, first and foremost, to make the state's cyber posture as secure as it could be?
When I look at security in that aspect, security should be able to scale at speed. We can't hide security. We need to be able to be scaled and modernized. If we're able to modernize our digital assets, we're able to secure it as well, because we need to listen to our customers and our stakeholders first. If we listen to our customers and stakeholders, that helps us refine our security strategy.
Daniel, one of the goals that you're trying to move toward is real-time monitoring across the state. How challenging is that based on what Dan outlined as 180 disparate organizations across the state of Oklahoma, making all of that data, making all of those systems operate, to Tai's point, seamlessly together? Real-time monitoring, what are your goals there? What's the, timeline associated with something like that?
Well, one of those things that Tai mentioned as well was centralization of data. If we use centralized data, we're able to scale that and to make sure those 180 organizations are actually protected. We're able to see in real time what security vulnerabilities are out there. When we have that information, we're able to refine it and actually modernize moving forward. And we're able to, at the same time, make that complexity of security systems invisible moving forward. So the timeline is not what's important. It's we do it at the appropriate speed without causing harm.
What about new building, Ty? Like, jump in there and let me know, when you go in and you're building new systems, new platforms, how do you decide which ones are sort of a shared resource? How do you decide which ones are much more agency specific?
I think the idea there is very simple. We are starting to look at the totality of IT as strategic assets for the state. And when you're trying to build a high-performing portfolio, you really need to make sure that you are putting the money where the value is. And so for us, the things that should be shared are the things that protect states, but then the things that we provide autonomy and decentralization and decision-making for agencies are the things that's very unique to their specific purpose and mission. Daniel brought up a great point here around the centralization of data. We take that as an example. It creates a lot of challenge in making decision on how to invest, where to invest, and whatnot. And when we think about life in the age of AI, centralization of data means data governance, and we can't have good AI without proper data governance. A lot of times the word governance gets in the way of making quality and aligned investment decisions. So we definitely need to make sure that as we continue to move forward, we stay partnered with our agency leaders. We talk to our private sector and vendors across the board, and also at the same time, we need to have a true value realization path for what it is that we do. So
We talked about this time before going on the air here, this balance, I'll call it, between pushing that innovation envelope and almost the avoidance of risk. And I kind of wonder, talking to both of you here, like, are you at odds on those two things? Like, you're the risk mitigation guy, you're the innovation guy, or is that part of both of your portfolios?
I would say it's a natural balance. He really is the yin to my yang when we think about being successful, transparent, and accountable from a state IT standpoint. Innovation without accountability, it's a recipe for failure. In fact, we had several vendors here who's come through and started to advertise and really create large promises, but we see peril at the same time. So trying to balance that is really, really key. At the end of the day, if these investments start to show early speed and value, it gives us confidence that we should continue to lead that towards a posture where we're scaling that out and creating greater lift and sustainability down the line for the state. But at the very same time, we have got to make sure that the speed in which we move forward is very tempered, very measured, aligned to our cyber posture, as well as all the other governance guardrails that's here. So at the end of the day, AI increases our risk surface dramatically, and we have to be very responsible and accountable for that, even if we're trying to move quickly with innovation.
Daniel, I was watching you out of the corner of my eye while Ty was talking there. There was a lot that resonated in what he said. Build upon that for me. Bring in that cyber perspective relative to risk. What are some of your key focal areas in there?
Well, one of the things to focus on is AI is both helpful and harmful. It can use to decrease our technical debt, but it also can harm our citizens. When you look at AI, there's things like deep fakes and the age of phishing just being a normal look for typos or look for this is gone. But at the same time, we're able to aggregate data in a faster scale so we can use it to help us. But we need to recognize both the harm and the good that AI can use.
Ty, I'd like to close on this phrase, customer-centric government. Comes up in that strategic plan a number of times. With your new role, combining this sort of technology and led with artificial intelligence, how do you approach that phrase, the customer-centric aspect of the work that you do?
Well, being a customer-centric government means putting our customers, who are agency leaders, as well as the millions of citizens in Oklahoma, really at the center of our technology strategy, planning, and design. It's, in fact, in my career, I've had multiple stops from a Fortune 100 standpoint, and what I have found to be very interesting is the consistency in the need to continue towards that goal. If you think about the IT industry, and the state is no exception to that, IT continues to shift left and drive towards a posture where it's value oriented. You can defend the investments, but then you also have a lot of telemetry into, does it make sense for the segment that you're serving? Here at the state, we're taking a very similar approach. And so when we, back to your question earlier around, well, how do you make a decision on technology? For us, if you look at our strategic plan, promoting customer centricity is the first of the four principles for a reason, because the questions that we're asking about and the questions that we're trying to answer tells a different story moving forward for how we're running state IT. The first one is, as we're putting customer at the center, what does that mean from a modernization agenda standpoint? It invites innovation because customer and consumer behavior is changing across the board. But because we operate in a state structure, accountability has to be there. So there's always that balance. I think that we ourselves being more customer-centric means that we have to take on a different mindset. What's easy? What's seamless? How do we reduce friction for the products and services that we provide to agencies, and how do they serve that out to the citizens? I think there's a product mindset and a lean agile transformation that is implied in the journey ahead, and we're definitely are going to embrace that. But ultimately, at the end of the day, I think change is probably the biggest component into what we do, especially in the age of AI. With how fast that this technology is changing, our attitude, our behavior has to keep up. And so we have to make sure that, when we're deploying innovative technology to be more customer-centric, we're not just putting a rocket on top of a horse. We have to learn new ways, new tricks in order to embrace and fully maximize the value of this technology. So I would say this is an evolution and a journey. We'll take it step by step, but we're certainly aggressive about how we're proceeding with that.
The team's sprinting to keep pace with an ambitious strategic plan for the state of Oklahoma. Tai Phan, Daniel Langley, thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.